children, as adults, and most importantly as Muslims, to reflect and learn lessons that we can implement in our daily lives, and to grow as human beings and become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and try to be as close as Allah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, as I will show you guys in this story. So Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he comes from a town where they called it Babylon, a place where everyone worshipped idols. They didn't believe that there was only one God that was the most powerful, the all-seeing, the all-hearing, the one that took care of all their affairs for the world and for the hereafter. So they looked to these idols and they worshipped them and they asked them for things, and the majority of them would ask them for gold and wealth and status, and more importantly health. And they would go to these statues and they will ask them and they will pray to them night and day. So his father's name was Azar, and he was a well-known idol sculptor. So basically the people used to worship the idols, but Ibrahim alayhi salam's father himself was the one that would sculpt these statues and these idols. And Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam often wondered, why do they worship these idols? I see my father, he builds these sculptures. I see my father at home, he builds these idols. And then the people of the public, they come and they worship what my father made, my father put into their existence. So without the father sculpting these idols wouldn't exist. So Ibrahim alayhi salam was always a smart boy, even when he was younger. And he never understood why were these people putting all their life savings and their trust in these idols that his father made. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, one night, he went and climbed a mountain because he could not stop thinking about, why are these people looking at the created instead of the creator? So he went to a mountain. Does anyone here like climbing mountains, climbing hills? Does anyone? Anta, what's your name? And do you like climbing hills? Climbing hills? Inshallah, we will take you one day. Okay, so he went to a high hill, and he looked at the sky, and he looked at the stars, and these stars were glistering over him, and he thought, maybe these stars, they're the all-powerful, right? They're up in the skies, they're watching us, they're glistering, they're shining. So he thought, you know what, let me pray to the stars. But as time went by, he realized that some stars were disappearing. And more time went past and more stars were disappearing. And he thought, how can these be God if they leave? Shouldn't God be always watching us with every single step and every single move that we make? Isn't that what God does? Doesn't God always look at us and judge us? So he said, the stars can't be it. So he looked at the moon. And the moon, it's much brighter and bigger than the stars. So he thought, you know what? Let me pray to the moon. And it kind of, sat with him more comfortably than the stars. But then he realized as the night left, so did the moon. So he thought, this can't be God. So the sun comes up. And now he can feel the rays and the heat of the sun. And he's in the desert, basically. So he feels the power of the sun. And he feels the heat. And God's powerful, isn't he? But then he realized at the break of dawn and at sunset, the sun got what? Weak. And it went down. And God doesn't get weak. God is all powerful. And he is the Almighty. And he controls everything. So he thought to himself, this can't be God. So Prophet Ibrahim alayhi being the smart kid that he was, he would go out to the markets and he would tell the people, "Oh people, why are you wasting your time worshipping and idolizing these things that my father makes? I watch them. They were just clay. My dad, he put some water, he put some dirt, and he makes a sculpture, and you guys are praying to it." So he went out to the markets and he would call to this and say to the people, this is falsehood. And there is a creator, that he creates everything and he's the most powerful. But the people didn't listen. And they got angry at Ibrahim alayhi salam. They got angry. They were furious with him. Why? Because these people didn't know better. These people were taught from their fathers and their fathers' fathers that these sculptures were going to provide for them wealth, health, and status. And at that time, status to the people was almost everything. So the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, one day when everyone had left the city to celebrate a festival as they did, worshipping these gods, they went to a nearby river, and Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam took the advantage. While all the people of the town left, he took an axe and he went to all the statues that were gathered in the city, and he would smash all the idols. And after he was done smashing all the idols, he left the biggest idol of them all, and he put the axe with that idol. When the people came back from the festival, they wondered, what happened to our gods? What happened? Who would dare to do this? So they wondered and they searched for who was responsible for this hideous crime. Soon after, the people recalled that young boy in the market that called to worshipping only one God, and he called to abandon our idols. Who did they go to? Ibrahim alayhi salam. So they went to Ibrahim alayhi salam and they questioned him. They said, "Oh Ibrahim, you were the only one in the town. When we all left to the festival, you were the only one in the town. So it had to be you." And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, what did we say about Ibrahim alayhi salam? He was very smart. He was a very wise boy. So what he done? He told them, go ask the biggest statue, the biggest idol. They said, why would we ask the biggest idol? He said, look, he has the axe. And if you're saying that he can help himself and he's the most powerful, then it'll be him that is responsible for what? Smashing and crashing all the idols. And they told Ibrahim, you know very well that these idols can't speak. We can't ask this idol. So what did Ibrahim alayhi salam say? He said, so if the idol can't respond to you, nor can he protect all the other idols, why do you worship these idols? It doesn't make sense, true? If you're going to worship God, God should be all-powerful and he should be able to defend himself at least, or defend the people that worship him. This did not sit well with the people. They knew that Ibrahim alayhi salam was responsible for this, so they gathered everyone in the town and they gathered all the wood that they could, and they started to light a huge fire, so hot and big and vicious that themselves, the one that made the fire, could not even bear the heat, and they could not even go near it. And because they couldn't go near it, they would build a catapult to put Ibrahim alayhi salam on it and fling him over into the sky and land in the fire. They had tied his hands and his feet. They placed him on the catapult and they threw him into the fire, and the rope that he was tied with burnt. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the fire become cool for the Prophet. So much so that he had time to think, and he would contemplate while this huge fire that they couldn't even bear, they couldn't even go near. But the Prophet was protected by whom? By Allah, by the true God, the true protector, not these idols. You know, if I was to get Play-Doh now and I was to make it into a man, is this Play-Doh going to protect me? Is it going to protect me? Or what are you going to do to the Play-Doh? You're going to smash it up again, and you're going to make it into a ball, or you're going to make it into a log. And this is what these people believed in. They believed in these sculptures that they made from dirt and water. So now, the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi wasalam was saved from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the true protector. He walked out of the fire without a single burn on his body, even though the rope burnt off. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had saved him, and since that, many people of the tribes started to believe Prophet Ibrahim and his message as the true prophet, but some still did not believe him because of their arrogance. They were arrogant. They were not nice people. Even though they seen the truth, they were still blinded by their traditions and what their fathers have taught them, even though their fathers were upon false. So Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam then met a king, and this king was named Nimrud. King Nimrud heard about the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and wanted to meet him. He said, "Who are you to say that the idols are false gods? Who is the only God worthy of worship?" The king asked this to who? Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam said in a very calm manner, "It is only Allah who has the power to give life and death." And so what did this arrogant king do? The arrogant king said he could do that too. He could give life and he could give death. So he called two of his slaves and told the first slave to kill the second slave. Then he told the guard to kill the first slave. But when the guard was about to kill the slave, the king stopped him and he tried to claim, and he said, "Look, the first guard, I killed him, and the other guard, I saved him from being killed. So I give life and I also give death." Arrogant. And is that true? No. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power to give life to humans and to all creations, and He is the only one to give death and end their life by His will. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam politely said that Allah made the sun rise from the east, so he challenged the king to make the sun rise from the west. The king was angry because he could not fulfill this challenge. Okay, he tried to demonstrate that he could give life and death, but now if you were truly God and you were truly powerful and you were this big king, then show us that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can rise the sun, then you rise it the other way. But he was not able to do so. Now, after many years had passed, the people in Babylon still refused to believe in the oneness of Allah, except for one woman and one man. The woman's name was Sarah, who later became the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam's wife, and the man was Lut alayhi salam, who would become a prophet too. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, Sarah and Lut migrated to another country to spread the message of Allah. They traveled to Syria, Palestine and Egypt. Remember these countries. Then Allah ordered Prophet Lut to migrate to the Dead Sea and settle there. Now, you had a question?
No, but I live in Egypt.
You live in Egypt. Go Egyptians. Okay, we'll leave all the rest of the questions for later. Now, the king wanted to marry Sarah. What is this about? The Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah got married, and they hoped that they have many children. And so the villagers seen the beauty of Sarah, and they started to talk about this. The king was intrigued, so he ordered his soldiers to bring Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ to the castle and asked what relation he had to Sarah, even though it was his wife. He told the king that it was his sister. Yes. Eagerly, the king requested Sarah to be brought to his castle. For their own safety, Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ told Sarah to pretend that it was his sister. At the castle, the king tried to inappropriately touch Sarah. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most powerful, made his hand go stiff and he couldn't move his hand. For Sarah told him that it is the bad that you done that caused this. And the king said, if Allah is true and he is the real God, then ask him to relieve me of my pain. And Sarah then made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he answered him. And he relieved the king of its pain. Now, as time went past, Prophet Ibrahim and Sarah grew old, and it became apparent that they would have children. And they were blessed with a child named Ismail alayhi salam, who also became a prophet. So Ibrahim alayhi salam was a prophet, and his son Ismail, Prophet Ibrahim was a prophet, and his son Ismail also became a prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed the Prophet Ibrahim to bring Hajar and Ismail to a faraway land. They walked for days before finally reaching to a dry valley near Al-Marwa hill. But there was no food and there was no water or trees. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then ordered the Prophet Ibrahim to leave his wife and his newborn baby in the middle of the desert with no water, no food, nothing. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, like what we said at the start, he was very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He believed in everything that had to do with Allah, the most powerful and the most wise. So he put his trust in Allah, and so he left. Now I want you guys to think about this. How many of us actually trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Don't you want to achieve the closest to Allah? You guys have to trust him like Ibrahim alayhi salam. He left his wife and his newborn baby in the middle of the desert with nothing in sight. So when Ismail alayhi salam, as a baby, became thirsty, and he started to cry, and he was nagging his mother, Hajar would desperately run up the hills of Safa and Al-Marwa in search for help and some water. She kept running between these two hills for 7 times. 7 times she kept going up and down, 7 times looking for water or any sign of some food. On her last climb of Al-Marwa, she became exhausted. So she sat next to her baby and prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. Suddenly, a stream of water gushed out from the sand, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told her to tap onto the ground. And as the water gushed out, she then scooped the water and fed Ismail alayhi salam. And she would say, Zum, Zum. And that's why we say that we call this water Zamzam water. And I think all of you pretty much have heard of Zamzam water. And what are the benefits of Zamzam water? What are the cool miracles of Zamzam water? Is that when we drink Zamzam water and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears us and he listens to us and he grants us our dua. And this is basically how the start of the city of Mecca began. Because a group of travelers saw birds flying around Al-Marwa. Convinced that they might be flying over water, the travelers traveled towards Al-Marwa hill. When they reached there, they were surprised to see Hajar and her baby. They asked for permission to drink from the stream that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them. And she allowed for the travelers to drink from Al-Zamzam well. After some time, many more people came to the valley, turning the barren valley into a bustling settlement, which today we know as Mecca. And where is Mecca? Saudi Arabia, yes. And why do we go to Mecca why do Muslims go to Mecca every single year? You. Yes, to finish the 5 pillars of Islam and do Hajj, which is the last pillar of Islam. So, when Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ was in Mecca, later he would come, he had a strange dream where he was sacrificing his own son to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he knew that this was a message. The next day, he saw the same dream and he realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was asking him to sacrifice his own son. So he told his son this dream. And his son, like his father, would obey Allah and his commands. And he told him, "O father, if this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you and I, then let it be." And so Ismail alayhi salam was ready to give up his life for the sake of Allah. So they set out to Mount Arafah. As they reached the mountain, Prophet Ismail asked the Prophet Ibrahim to tie his hand and feet so he would not struggle. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam then blindfolded his eyes so he did not have to watch his son suffer. As his father laid a sharp knife upon his neck, he heard a voice from the sky. He took his blind off and he saw a sheep lying down in his son's place. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam then realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent this ram to be sacrificed instead of Prophet Ismail alayhi salam. Imagine that, what a miracle. He's seen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him a sacrificial lamb instead of sacrificing his own son because of what he would do in his obedience to Allah. And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works. When Allah sees that we listen to him and we obey him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us more. And he gives us more and more, so much so that we could never thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings and the gifts that he gives to us. So they were happy that they had passed the test. The Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam slaughtered the ram and they had a big celebration. And this is why we celebrate Eid al-Adha. Because in Arabic, al-Dabah is the slaughtering. Al-Adha is when we slaughter the sheep that we slaughter on Eid. And so Ismail alayhi salam would then grow. And as time passed, many people started to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet Ibrahim's message would be spread. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son to build a house where the people can worship and gather to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we know today as the Kaaba. Prophet Ismail alayhi salam brought many stones to the Prophet Ibrahim, who placed them to build the house. When the wall got higher, Prophet Ismail alayhi salam brought in one large stone for the Prophet Ibrahim to stand on. This stone is known as Maqam Ibrahim. And this is the place that we go to after Umrah and we pray behind it. Now, when they almost completed building this house, the Kaaba, there was one empty corner. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam asked his son to find a stone to fill in the corner. While Prophet Ismail alayhi salam was searching for the stone, an angel came and gave a stone from the paradise, from heaven. This stone is now known as Hajar al-Aswad. And this is on the corner. It's a black rock that we see on the Kaaba that everyone, when they're at Hajj and Umrah, they kiss and they touch it. At the time though, this stone was white in color. But because of the sins made by the people on earth, it had turned black. Allah was very pleased with Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail for completing the Kaaba and proclaimed pilgrimage among mankind. So now that is why we, as Muslims, we have our 5 pillars of Islam, and Hajj is a very important pillar. And if we have the opportunity, may Allah grant us all the opportunity, Ameen, to make and fulfill the pilgrimage of Hajj. And so this completes the story of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And now, if anyone has any questions, I will give you guys a bit of time to ask some questions before we go into our Kahoot quiz that Abdul Rahman has kindly made for us. Is that ready? All right. Okay. Who has questions about the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam? This is so the question is what's your name? Muhammad. Muhammad from Egypt is asking, okay, he's asking, although he himself knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most powerful and he's the most wise and he can do anything he wants, how is it that the sheep came out of nowhere? And how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bring him into, while the Prophet Ibrahim wasn't looking, he brought a sheep out of nowhere? The answer to this, actually, you know what? I want someone from you guys to answer this question in the yellow scarf. Yes. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that He is powerful and He can control everything. But what you fail to understand is that He has no limits. There's nothing at all, nothing that you can think of, nothing that you can imagine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot do. If you were to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for unlimited chocolate, unlimited lollies, unlimited games, there's no limit to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can provide. Whatever it is, there's no stopping. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not get exhausted. He does not get tired. He has no limits. There's no maximum to what He can do. So, how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all of a sudden make a sheep appear? That is beyond what we know. But all we know is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do whatever He wants. So if it means that He makes a sheep come from the thin air, boom, appear just like that, then we have to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do so. And it is true that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make anything appear and anything disappear. Okay, anyone who else has a question? I'll ask the question. The one next to you. The sheep did not come from the sun. It came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who else has a question about the story? Yes. You go. So the rocks that the Kaaba were made from was what they could gather. As we said in the story, Ismail alayhi salam would gather the rocks for his father, whatever it is that they could find, big rocks to be stable and so that it could hold itself. But the last rock that they were using to fill the gap was from heaven. So what it was made from, we don't know. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what material this rock is made out of. But we know for sure that it was sent from above, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His angel. And also, I want you guys to understand that these things didn't come to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam because he was lucky. These miracles came to Ibrahim alayhi salam because he was obedient to Allah. He listened to Allah and he trusted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, for ourselves, what do we have to learn? is that tonight, or after this session, when the adhan goes off, we have to go do our wudu, we have to get ready for salah, we have to come line up, be quiet, and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be happy with us first, like He was very happy with Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his sons. Second of all, so that He can accept our actions. And third of all, so that when you make dua for lollies and games, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can what? He can listen to you. Because if you're not going to listen to your parents, are your parents going to allow you to play and allow you to have treats and allow you to have food and water? No. Your parents are going to make sure that you are in line, you are nice and you are polite, and then your parents will reward you with the lollies and the chocolates. So that's why we have to think like that with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to listen to Him, we have to obey Him, and we have to make sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with us, so that He can listen to us when we ask Him for whatever we want. Okay, now we're going to have a Kahoot quiz. Alright, we got one more question. Sisters, one of the sisters are asking a question. Okay. Why did Ibrahim alayhi salam leave his child that was a baby, a newborn baby, and his wife alone in the desert with no water, no food, and no shelter? Why? We said in the story earlier on that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to test Ibrahim alayhi salam to see if he would trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of his family. Because, and this is